Welcome to a special solo Mets show of Next Man Up. I'm Tony Joseph, and I'm here to discuss Mets misery, baby. It's June 28th, and we are 8.5 games back of the wild card. Mainly going to talk about Steve Cohen's press conference. It's rare when an owner is forced to talk when a team is doing this bad and fingers are being pointed. Nobody knows what to do. Is it Buck's fault? Is it Epler's fault? Is it the players' fault? Is it the fans' fault? Are we part of the problem? Stay tuned, and you will find out because it all starts now. Thank you for joining Misery on today's show. I mean, listen, we can look at it as misery or we can look at it as being a realist. That's something pessimists say all the time. I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist. But when you're a Mets fan, you're always battling with your irrational dreams and hopes that we can bring back the 80s, or, is this going to be like the early 60s when we first started and we just flat out stunk? There never seems to be an in between. We're either winning the whole thing or we're a disgusting garbage team. Obviously, that's not true, but when you're with the fans and when you're in the crowd, that's sort of the feel. It's sort of the pulse. It's either the sky's falling or it's a beautiful sunny day and there's no in between. So right now, the reality is it's been bad, but it's not unfixable. We've seen the Phillies, what they did last year. The Braves, what they did to us last year. Teams can go on runs after the trade deadline, and obviously we have not gotten to that point. But with all this going on, with the Mets 8 games under 500, basically you need to be 500 to be in the wild card discussion, and the Mets are not even close to that. So how do we get back to 500? How do we get there? Well, let's start with asking Steve Cohen, who decided to speak to the media today. A lot of people were begging to hear from him. And I just feel like there are a few key takeaways from that. First and foremost, he flat out said that Buck Showalter and Billy Epler are not going anywhere this season. Okay. Okay. I mean, personally, I feel like Epler is the most responsible for the situation the Mets are in right now. Looking at our offseason, looking at how players that have left us have been doing, like Walker and Bassett, obviously DeGrom left and it didn't really work out for him, but they haven't replaced what DeGrom was last year to this year's team. So and obviously invested more money in Verlander, and the money we invested in Scherzer not exactly looking like wise financial decisions, and lost some talent in the bullpen. Seth Lugo was a huge part of the Mets for many years. He could be your fifth starter. He could be your closer. He could be your middle long-term relief guy. He was very reliable. And we see him he's doing pretty well with the Padres, but I almost feel like he would have done better if he stayed here. It's players like that you miss. Walker loved being a Met. Bassett loved being a Met. It seemed like we had personalities that we are missing this year. But what else did Cohen say? Obviously, another key takeaway from his press conference was that he wants a president of baseball operations. We've seen that work in the past, but right now with Cohen and Epler and Showalter, you kind of wonder who's really in charge. Obviously Cohen says things like, hey, I got plenty of money. I'm willing to spend it. And when they ask him actual baseball questions, he literally says, oh, whoa, that's above my pay grade, which is silly considering he has the highest pay grade out of everybody. But obviously he's saying, look, that's not my job. And as an owner, I actually want him to say that. I think we should ask baseball questions to baseball professionals. Just because he's an owner, he's really just a really rich fan. That's the way we have to look at it. Obviously, he's had a ton of success in his hedge fund trading business. I hope it's legal. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just saying when somebody is that rich, I'm an Islanders fan, you just never know who's buying your team and you never really know what they could be doing with their money. So hopefully Cohen seems like a good guy. It seems like his money and riches are totally legit, and that he truly is just like, oh my gosh, I got so much money I can actually buy the New York Mets. So hopefully that's the case. But he spoke to me today, and he said he was going to have the answers and he won't BS anybody. Okay, well, he didn't really say anything we don't know. I'm glad he at least told us that Buck isn't going anywhere, so we can stop those stupid reports of should we fire him, should we not fire him, is he good, has we lost the team, is he too old, are his press conferences too boring, does he know what pitchers to throw in or put in? I don't know. I don't even judge managers on managerial decisions anymore. I know that sounds stupid, but in today's sabermetric world, baseball results are put out on a piece of paper. And maybe skippers still go with their gut sometimes, but there are absolute algorithms that are making these decisions. So if you don't like decisions he's making, you really just don't like modern day baseball. And that's fair. There is a lot of data. We have a lot of new stuff happening. It's exciting, but at times we get nose deep in the book, and we don't exactly follow our hunches or our gut feelings. Baseball, I think, is a balance of numbers and gut feelings at the end of the day. So hopefully the progress of the technology we're seeing in baseball can remain to be a good thing, because for nerds like me, I love the stats. I love to analyze WAR ratings and stuff like that. What a great way to evaluate a player's value. How many wins above the replacement of the player would we have? That's what WAR rating is. It's interesting. If you haven't gotten into the super number stuff, if you're an older baseball fan, there is some legitimacy to it. But it is upsetting when skippers like Buck Showalter, who have done everything but won a World Series in their career and know what they're doing behind the bench, don't exactly have the same responsibilities that they normally do. I can understand that being annoying, but he's not going anywhere. Epler, who is my biggest person to blame, honestly, he's not going anywhere, and apparently he might get a new boss. So I would like Theo Epstein, if any, to keep it positive. Who can the Mets get as a president? Let's start that discussion and have it some other time. You ask me, Theo Epstein. Whatever. We'll see if he comes. You can fix the cursed Cubs. You can fix this crazy fan base, hopefully, or this crazy franchise with this crazy fan base, hopefully. But hopefully whoever they bring in, it's not too many cooks, because like I was just saying, you don't know who's in charge, and it's hard to always know who's making the major decisions. The president could erase that. Maybe that's why Cohen is leaning that way. Say, hey, ask him. Stop asking me. And lastly, right when he was about to leave Cohen from the press conference and the media was ready to feast on his flesh, like in Lord of the Rings, there was a little puppy that they brought out instead. So everybody went, what the heck's going on? Just to distract the media. You could say it's brilliant. You could say it's a bad look. I'm in the middle. Okay. Like, obviously today is not going to be a fun day. The media in New York is going to hound you. They're not always fun. They're a lot of fun when you win, but when you lose, it's hard. And obviously, I just can't say enough. The pitching is the problem. Starters and bullpen. Obviously, you look, I hate to compare to the Yankees, but the Yankees have a bullpen, and it makes a huge difference. Yeah, they're missing Judge. They got their own problems, but they're in a much better situation than us. And I tell you, I'd rather have Brian Cashman than Billy Epler. I will say that. But obviously, there has been some underperformance as well from some of the bats. I don't really blame the bats as much, simply because the Mets are 14th in runs scored. They're averaging over 4 runs per game. Again, I'm a numbers nerd. If you're averaging over 4.5 runs per game, and you're 14th, there's a lot more runs in baseball. And the Mets seem to be losing games where they score 7 or 8 runs because the bullpen can't get out of it, because the starter's only giving you 5 or 6. This is all numbers game. And we just aren't getting innings from our pitchers that we need. It doesn't matter how bad Verlander's doing through 5 innings. We need 6 from him. And especially, with some of our bullpen being shorthanded, without Diaz and the suspension of Smith, everything we talked about, it was unfortunate to see good players leave in the offseason and to know that we didn't really properly replace them. A lot of you got excited for Verlander. I got excited for Verlander, but obviously we all saw the 4 in the front of his age. Okay, or the 39, 41, whatever the hell he is, late 30s, early 40s. I think he's 39 and they signed him to a 2-year deal, and he could technically be on the Mets till he's 41, if I'm not mistaken. That's pretty risky, even for someone as successful as he was, just because Father Time is undefeated. And if you're a fan of the New York Mets, you should know that nothing is a guarantee. I wanted the Mets to keep DeGrom. Look what happened to him. Obviously, my condolences go out to him. He looks like he knows his career is over. Tommy John surgery. Man, at his stage in his career, that stinks. Uh, Rangers, yeah, that's guaranteed money. Sorry, obviously, I think they get something back with insurance, but I'm glad it's not us for once. Not to be, a jackass, but I am kind of glad it's not us for once. Alonso is a home run hitting machine, but he needs to get his average up. I would rather him hit 40 home runs instead of 60 and hit somewhere between 250 and 280. I know. Who cares about batting average anymore? It's all about home runs, RBIs, runs scored. A little bit. A little bit. It's kind of true. That's how these players are evaluated. It's why Francisco Lindor, who has gotten his average up from where it was. I mean, it's only, I think, around 240 now, but to go from as low as it was and, still be probably the best run scoring shortstop in the National League, he hit his 200th career home run the other night. I believe it was his 14th or 15th home run of the season. That's pretty darn good. But obviously, the average is not where it needs to be. But for someone, especially like Jeff McNeil, who we've seen win a batting title and is normally a hit machine, still not striking out, so that's good. But geez, if someone like him, who is a slapstick choke up hitter, is not actually going to hit over 300, their value drops significantly in today's game, where it's all about home runs and no one's looking at average, like I just said. So that's been a huge disappointment, to say the least. And honestly, I hate to pick on individuals, especially individuals that we know have been through a lot in their lives. But Starling Marte, he just hasn't had it this year. I mean, ever since he got hurt at the end of last year, he hasn't looked the same. He reminds me a little bit of some players we've seen in the past, like obviously not the same position, but Robinson Cano. He used to be known for showing flashes of brilliant athleticism, but also showing flashes of being somewhat lackadaisical. And you just wondered if he was able to give it 100% in 162 games in a season, which is hard. Baseball's boring. You get bored out there, especially in right field for Marte. But we got to see a little more effort out there, especially in right field, especially running the bases. I think Buck gives him a pass because he needs him. But this is New York, and you're 8 games under 500, 8.5 games back of the wild card. Please run. Sorry, I have to say that. You make multi-millions. Some fan maybe could barely get in there for the $25, $30 nosebleed ticket they could barely afford. You run. You run. Kobe Bryant said this one time, and he battled through injuries to play on the court when he probably shouldn't have been playing. He said, I think about that kid in the rafters who spent their weeks, or that parent who spent their week's paycheck to take their kid to the game, and I don't want them to miss seeing me. That should be the attitude for a baseball star like Marte. But it's just not, and just in baseball in general, it's not like basketball, so don't take that the wrong way. But I'm just saying, I like that old school mentality. People are paying their hard-earned money to see you play. If you're on the field, and you better be able to give it 100% if you're on the field. Okay? I don't know where I stand on pushing through injuries, all that. Kobe was an interesting quote, but get on the field and play hard when you are on the field, more importantly. But he's been a disappointment. And obviously, Nimmo, yeah, we signed him long term, and I still think his personality and leadership and everything is great. We've still seen him play extremely well. He's a tremendous center fielder. He's able to extend doubles into triples more often than not. But another guy having a down year from what we expect him to have normally. I mean, last year you talked about Nimmo, you talked about McNeil, you talked about Marte, Lindor, Alonso, even Vogie. Vogie last year had an impact. Vogie right now is fighting for his major league life, and they had to give him a mental health day. Don't make fun of him for that, by the way. Okay? When you are in a slump like he's in, and he's clearly frustrated, he's clearly capable of doing better, and he's clearly in a psychological funk, it's okay to admit that a young man needs help. So Vogie, yeah, mental health day, fine. It's not like people want to see you go 0 for 4 striking out. If this can help, I see no reason why we shouldn't embrace the fact that he got some help, and he's looked a little better since then. And who knows? Maybe he just went for a walk at the park or the beach. I don't know. It was quote unquote a mental health day. I was hoping he saw a professional, but great to see Vogie swinging the bat a little bit better. He has no choice but to do something as a DH because he really has no positional value, with Alonso being our day-to-day first baseman. We haven't seen him draw nearly as many walks as we used to see. It'd be nice to see that a little bit more as well, but Oh, yeah. Didn't mention Tyler McGill, who probably had the biggest downfall from last year to this year. Just couldn't put it together. Couldn't be the old McGill and was forced to be released. And that stinks. I liked him, but I guess the Mets are pretty out of it right now. And if you're asking me honestly, hey, Tony Joseph Beers, whatever you call me, the Mets gonna make it back, come back this year. I mean, everybody talks to me like this, whether you're in my family, my friends, locals, neighbors, whatever. You may think it's funny, but this is how most people talk to me. And honestly, if they are asking me, are the Mets done? I'm leaning towards they're probably done than I am leaning more towards that they can do it. I will never say the season's completely over because mathematically that's incorrect. And obviously, if you looked at the Philadelphia Phillies last year, anything can happen, baby. And you've looked at the Mets in 1972 and 2015, whatever. Think about or even 2016. The sky was falling in the middle of the year. Terry Collins had a big blown up press conference. I remember it like it was yesterday. He basically said his game is hard. Just shut up. I would like to see more of that out of Buck, honestly. Terry Collins was not a perfect manager, but I think New Yorkers really responded to him because he said what we thought so often. And that wire of him arguing with that umpire when Syndergaard got thrown out, man, I miss that spunk. Buck, I think, has a good relationship with his players, but when he has these, and what he always does in the press conferences, he goes, oh, he kind of has like ADHD. He like gets off subject. Stop asking me a tough question. Well, it's a strategy. I get it, but it's boring. And it'd be nice for him to just look us in the eye and be like, man, this flat out stinks. Come on, let's get it together. And obviously, Cohen kind of did that today. And we'll see what the Mets do at the upcoming trade deadline. I think they really should lean towards selling. I think they should lean towards playing the youth. I'm excited about Alvarez. That's probably the biggest positive from last year. This year is now we have a potential all-star catcher for many, many years. I'm not convinced Beatty is anything special yet. Obviously, he can change my mind. He's still very young. The Mets just traded away Escobar for a bag of balls, cash, and some very young relief pitchers. But I don't know yet. And same with Vientos. Like, it's possible, but I don't know yet. Alvarez, I feel like I know, is a star. When you're rumored to date Taylor Swift and you swing every pitch for the fences and you got an earring like he's got and he's got like 6 buttons undone, he just screams star. And more importantly, he can catch. He can frame a pitch, which is important. He works for sure. If you can catch for Scherzer in Major League Baseball, you can catch for anybody. That's a fact. But Mets fans, stick with it. It's a long season. See if we can win a game tonight. See if we can win a game tomorrow. Just take it day to day. Live in the present. There's no other sports. Or, there's WNBA. The Liberty have been doing well. But, in terms of the core 4 of American sports, which we all know, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. It's really just MLB right now. Other off-season stuff going on, but just try and enjoy the baseball season. It's summer. 4th of July is coming up. This is the time of year where you're supposed to kick back, take it slow, have a conversation, tell a story, eat an entire bag of peanuts, whatever you need to do. Drink 2 or 3 beers, get through the game. The Mets might not be as special as they were last year, but even as special as they were last year, they fell apart and broke our hearts. So odds are, if they don't win the World Series, there's going to be some form of heartbreak. So let's just try and live in the present and understand that we have a new ownership. This is a new regime. There might be some growing pains. Biggest thing I think Cohen looked nervous about today is when in 2020 he said, "Give me 3 to 5 years." We're at year 3, and we're going backwards from last year. Last year, everyone thought he was a genius, but let's see what happens. The new owner for the Vegas Knights said, "Give me 6 years to win a cup," and in exactly 6 years they won. So maybe in exactly 5 years the Mets will be in that situation also. But I really appreciate everybody tuning in. This is sort of an expressive solo pod for the Mets. I've been rambling. I'm all over the place. But if you want to talk about it, you want to talk about some Mets baseball, the Down the Rabbit Hole Media DMs, that's me. I'm Tony Joseph 306. Follow me on Instagram. You can message me there. If you happen to know me personally, you have my personal number. Please feel free to reach out to me. I love talking sports. I love talking about the Mets. As poorly as they've done this year, we're going to stick by them. We're still going to talk about it. We're going to argue over who's more to blame, who's less to blame, whatever. But stick by the team. Let's stay together. And don't be that Met fan that says, fire everybody. We suck. I hate it. Don't be that Frank the Tank guy. I actually have interviewed Frank the Tank multiple times. Initially, when he went viral, I invited him on my podcast. He was doing interviews with everybody. He's a nice guy. I mean nothing against Frankie Midnight, but obviously he's either trying to get views with his rants or eating his hat, like losing it every time they think they're terrible. Like, okay, you're hysterical, whatever. We don't need to be hysterical every single day. I don't have the capacity to do it. I can't do it. So Mets fans, enjoy the sunshine, drink a beer, relax, and maybe we can win one game at a time. Take it one round at a time, one punch at a time. That's the Rocky Creed speech that I like in particular when Stallone is talking to Creed. One round at a time, one punch at a time, one step at a time. Slow it, break it down even less. One pitch at a time. Can our pitchers figure it out? Scherzer does have a winning record, but can he stop giving up home runs? Can he adjust to the pitch clock? Verlander, can he settle down and be the Verlander that we've seen before? Senga, obviously that fork ball is awesome, but can he find a way to lessen the walks and lessen the damage when he puts too many runners on base, lower that whip rating? It's okay. It's not the end of the world if we don't have it this year. We got an owner that's going to take action in the offseason. It's not like we're going to go home and be like the Wilpons. We cried for owners with money for far too long to throw Cohen off the bus already. He's got a lot of money. Doesn't mean he knows how to use it, but let's be patient with him. He loves the Mets. And as Gary Cohen said, we are in good hands. Thank you for tuning in. This was a special Mets solo podcast of Next Man Up. I'm Tony Joseph. Tune in for more updates. It's going to be a little slower lately. Not a ton going on with sports. I got some personal matters to attend to. Nothing crazy. Don't worry about it. But it's been kind of a transitional time for me in a lot of ways. So just stay tuned. I think probably next month. It's almost July. Towards the end of July, next month period, you'll see a lot more action with Next Man Up. You'll see a lot more action with Down the Rabbit Hole Media. We're going to start marketing it heavily. If you're interested in podcasting, you're interested in getting involved, please reach out to me. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned.